Trump this week calling out what he calls wasteful government spending programs. For more on this, let's bring in White Coat Waste Project VP of Public Policy, Justin Goodman. Justin, thank you for joining us this afternoon. So what is this grant and how did you find it?
Yeah, so the waste in Washington is worse than anyone could possibly imagine when it comes to animal testing. We're talking about $20 billion a year, and we are so proud that President Trump featured some of these wasteful transgender experiments that we've exposed, and honored that he took swift and decisive action to cut some of that spending the morning after the address to Congress. We've exposed hundreds of millions of dollars of NIH spending, even spending by the NSF and the U.S. Department of Agriculture on animal experiments in colleges and universities across the country that are giving lab animals, hormone therapies, invasive surgeries to create trans-feminine, trans-masculine mice and rats, giving puberty blockers to baby animals to mimic trans kids, and then electroshocking them. In some cases, they're even giving these transgender animals sex party drugs and overdosing them to see what happens.
There are some fact checkers out there who say that this wasn't specifically an experiment on making mice trans. Did that specifically happen, or what's your take on it?
Not only was President Trump right about the transgender animal experiments, but the problem was way worse than he explained. He focused on the $8 million in these 7 grants that DOGE cut the next morning, but actually there's over 22 active grants from NIH for funding specifically the creation of transgender animals in these laboratories. And if you look at the titles of the grants, the grant descriptions, and the titles of the taxpayer-funded papers that are coming out of these laboratories, they specifically state we are trying to create transgender mouse models, trans-feminine, trans-masculine mouse models to mimic transgender adults and children with these gender-affirming therapies in laboratory animals, invasive gender-affirming surgeries in laboratory animals, and other really disturbing and cruel experimentation, all to mimic transgender adults and children. These are the specific reasons why they got the grants in the first place, was because some of these grants are DEI funding that experimenters at these colleges and universities were able to rake in specifically for transgender animal experiments.
And you guys look beyond a lot of other issues. I mean, it really just deals with animal testing, and that's how you found a lot of the grants that dealt with bat testing in Wuhan, right?
That's absolutely right. In April 2020, we were the first to expose Fauci's funding for the Wuhan laboratory that now, of course, most people and the federal government believe caused COVID. And we've been following the money since then. We've exposed Fauci's beagle testing around the world. And right now, actually, despite what happened in Wuhan, we recently exposed a contract to a Chinese lab being funded by the NIH and DOD, where they are torturing 300 beagles a week in drug tests. And the specific reason they choose beagles in this contract to this Chinese laboratory states they are cute, docile, and easy to domesticate. So our tax dollars are paying to torture beagles for the exact reason they make such great pets.
And Justin, very quickly, there were some scientists in town yesterday who were opposing the cuts, protesting the cuts to scientific funding. Do you think the government might be going too far in cutting grants?
Absolutely not. The NIH actually gave an award a few years ago to a researcher at Yale who estimated 87.5% of all biomedical research, specifically animal testing too, is wasteful. So we need to slash and burn it, and agencies like the NIH, and I think people like Jay Bhattacharya, the new director, are going to be able to rebuild in a more common sense way.
Justin Goodman, live for us this afternoon. Justin, thank you.
Thanks, Rich.